Today we have a quick video, relatively speaking, on deliberate sentence fragments to complement your textbook reading. You might be thinking, okay, why would I want to make a sentence fragment? Those are things that get marked in red ink all over my papers. Why would I intentionally make an error? Well, experienced writers use fragments deliberately and effectively. The distinction here is the intent. If it is intentional, not accidental, if you're doing it for effect, not because you don't know how to write a complete sentence, then maybe it's okay. Like everything else in Chapter 11 and a lot of the other structures we've been looking at, the intentional fragment is sending up a flag, sending up flares screaming, "Look at me, look at me." So how do you know if you have a fragment, whether it's intentional or accidental? Often fragments are a type of clause that can't stand on its own. Many fragments start with a subordinating conjunction after we finish dinner in the MSc. Although I really wanted to take that class, when you start a sentence with a subordinate clause, you need a main clause after a comma to round out the sentence and make it a complex sentence. Another common class of sentence fragment starts with a relative pronoun. A writer who's still gaining experience might say, "I really like my new teacher, period, who went to Prairie View A&M University in 1996, period." This fragment stands out, and the easiest way to correct it is to piggyback it onto the sentence that comes before it. Usually with a fragment, you're looking to connect it to what comes before or after it. So in your own writing, pay attention to anything that starts with these words to make sure there is actually a complete sentence in there somewhere. And if you're a future teacher, be on the lookout for what seems to be a sentence starting with these words. What works as an intentional, deliberate fragment? Our book suggests noun phrases, including absolute phrases, which we talked about last class, and verb phrases, as long as all of this has dramatic detail. Here's an example. She stopped and listened. A steady, menacing sound of footsteps. Terrified, she ran. My sentence fragment here is a noun phrase, a steady, menacing sound of footsteps. But it does add drama. It wouldn't be the same if I'd said, "She stopped and listened. She heard a steady, menacing sound of footsteps. Terrified, she ran." Fragments usually pull your readers up short. They say, "Wait a second, this is not a complete sentence." Because it's going to call attention to itself, you want to make sure it's worth all of that attention. In literature, we also see a lot of sentence fragments in stream of consciousness, because a lot of times we think in sentence fragments. You also see sentence fragments in dialogue. We don't speak in complete sentences all the time. If you look on page 222, there's an example from Love Medicine. There are 12 complete sentences there, and there are 14 sentence fragments, including some nice anaphora. There's 7 straight fragments that open with her. As you look at this passage, is it not effective? Are there too many fragments? Do you feel like, wow, how did this person ever get published? She can't even write in complete sentences. Here's the single literary example I'm going to ask you to look at in this video. It comes from Lord George Gordon Byron, a British Romantic poet. Do you see sentence fragments? Here's some possibilities. Poetry is a little tricky because, yes, the line may end with a comma or a semicolon, but maybe my independent clause is just 17 lines down the page. The first two I have here in red and green. Are these sentence fragments? They do start with when. I have a subordinating conjunction. Is there a main clause later? Could you argue that when to their airy hall and when poised upon the gale are connected to, oh, may my shade behold no sculptured urns? You could. The semicolons might give you pause. The lack of a conjunction between these when clauses might give you a pause. But remember, you're allowed to do that with a syndeton. How about the phrase in blue? No lengthened scroll, no praise-encumbered stone. Two noun phrases connected with a syndeton, no conjunction in between this pair. Fragment, or is it just setting up, my epitaph shall be my name alone? What would you say about the final line that I have in orange? That, only that, shall single out the spot, semicolon, by that remembered, or with that forgot. Is this part of the previous line, a continuation of the idea, part of the sentence, or are we supposed to see it as a fragment? Often things aren't as cut and dried as we would like them to be. So in the spirit of Byron, come up with your own deliberate fragment passage, like the one that I showed you. A complete sentence, a sentence fragment, and then another complete sentence. Be sure to make it dramatic. To help inspire you, some music with a little bit of drama. So now a question for you future teachers. What would you do? How are you going to handle the issue of deliberate versus unintentional sentence fragments? Are you going to be a prescriptive grammarian and say no fragments ever? Or are you going to allow them if they seem to be rhetorically effective? At what grade level do you think students are ready for this concept that sometimes it's okay to write an incomplete sentence? Are you prepared to do it now in college? Whether you're going to be a teacher or not, what would you say to the author of this paragraph? Your life's goals and future success in your specific industry. Internships are of great importance. No one has to take part in them. They're just there for the student's benefit, to help them obtain something that will give them purpose in their lives. Such guidance will really open your eyes to what's really out there. Are internships a great idea? Yes. Does this passage have sentence fragments? Yes. The very first sentence is a fragment. Yesterday, your life's goals and future success. Tomorrow, your life's goals and future success. There's no verb here. Is this an effective fragment? Does it call attention to itself as a noun phrase starting off this paragraph?
Our other fragment starts with to help them obtain something that will give them purpose in their lives. It would be really easy just to piggyback this on the sentence before. They're just there for the student's benefit to help them obtain something. What would you tell this author to do? Would you say fragment, fragment, fix it? Join it to this sentence, join it to that sentence, add this kind of verb? Here at least is what I do. My approach is to ask if the fragment is intentional. This is a literary analysis that somebody did for me about Nella Larsen's short story Sanctuary. And you'll see back in 2007, my comment was intentional sentence fragment ? It's very possible that this student did this sentence fragment on purpose. It's a noun phrase. This story is very deep and serious, period. A black mother sacrificing her feelings for the life of a black man because of white racism. But what I always want to know is whether or not the sentence fragment is intentional. I could offer advice about if it is a fragment and you didn't mean to do it this way, here's how to correct it. I could offer further feedback about how intentional sentence fragments should be used sparingly for dramatic emphasis. But at least at the college level, I try not to say, fragment, fix this, get rid of it. What are you going to do in your own classroom, in your legal writing, in your press releases? During the next class period, we're going to talk about this issue of grammatical fragments.